invasion of privacy. As we go forward, and Mr. First is right, if we find more evidence of retaliation, we'll move to amend the complaint to bring a First Amendment retaliation claim. And my law firm has won a couple of those in U.S. District Court, and we would bring that claim if we find additional evidence. But at this point, we're sticking to the privacy violations, but we're pretty sure when we start talking to the individual law enforcement officers, when the state identifies them, they'll be pretty clear the only reason they were pinging individuals of this group was who they were. And you can't do that. We can't have the government targeting individuals for illegal acts because of who they are.
Even if this group was a targeted group, is there something that they all have in common? Is there a political party or an affiliation? Or could there be more people that come forward?
There are some people who haven't come forward who have associated with the group's positions on different issues because of the fear of the unknown. We're encouraging them to come forward, either anonymously, but with respect to the group, why it's known is because they're so publicly active. They go to county board meetings, they go to other meetings. Representative Drazkowski's in the state legislature. As heard, we have 3 current or former Wabasha County board members. You have 40% of the Wabasha County board here saying this is wrong for the sheriff and the county attorney to do this. 40% of the board. Where's the other 60%? Are they going to do anything? The Department of Public Safety, the commissioner, she knows this is going on. Is she going to do anything? The Office of Legislative Auditor has published a report. They all know this is a problem. So nothing's happening. It reminds us of the Metro Gang Strike Force. You know, several millions of dollars of stolen goods, law enforcement violating the law. Well, where are the convictions? There are none. Why do the people give law enforcement a pass? It's a good check on how we're doing as a society. Is law enforcement following the law? If law enforcement is violating the law, then we must not be doing so well as a society. Plus, what law enforcement officers wouldn't understand that to violate the law is to undermine their moral authority to enforce the law.
Is there any evidence then, so obviously there's, information being sought multiple times. Is there any evidence that these government agencies that are listed in the complaint are doing anything with that information? That any of these individuals have any experience with that, like they were contacted or they were, I think one mentioned they had criminal charges or something.
Yeah, the group has been singled out for abusive treatment in many ways and retaliatory ways. The way they're spoken to, the way they're addressed by the county sheriff, the county attorney, the employees, and there have been multiple basis investigations. Representative Drazkowski.
I would just add, Channel 5 did a piece here back on, Jenny Olson did a piece on the 6th of September. 4 charged in the Metro with stealing hundreds of identities. And these were government employees, past government employees, who had used their access to government data, much of it protected data, and then ended up stealing their identities. So the question that I have, and I think the question that everybody before you here today is, what is the next step? What's going to happen with this data? Right to the essence of your question. Where do these individuals go with this data next? And do we find that our Social Security numbers are likely to go away?
Can I ask you why you feel there's a political motivation to look up certain cases of yourself and your family?
Well, I think it's consistent with what everybody here is saying, and it really is. I am and have been outspoken for government reform long before, in Wabasha County, long before I was elected to office. There was a large issue around a county jail that cost $30 million that currently has got maybe 20 people in it that the taxpayers are paying off. Those issues and those political involvements in the past drew all kinds of interest from these folks.
How many times has your information been accessed?
I covered it earlier, Tom, but my family 133 times. Mine personally, I think it was 95 or something like that.
Well, so when you say retaliation, are you saying that the pings are the retaliation, or that there's retaliation once they look up your information in the way they treat you?
I think it's both. We may ask others, and Eric might have something to say about that, but it appears to me that both, and we'll learn more upon discovery in the lawsuit about the extent of that.
I think the evidence of retaliation I have is just the, going to many of the hearings down in Wabasha County, the board, observing the conduct of the police at the hearings that I've been involved in district court, and just the general attitude that, you know, somehow my clients should be marginalized. It's also present in the local press. And the lawsuits that we brought, you know, are winners. I mean, the first lawsuit was against the citizens of the study commission that was formed down there by the court. And the court, they didn't properly file their acceptances of appointments. And now we're in the Court of Appeals. Does the study commission have to follow the law? Then on the driver safety school, which has been reported on, I mean, the Wabasha County Sheriff is running illegal driver safety school as a diversionary program to take state funds and bring it into the county. The state auditor has told the Wabasha County 9 or 10 years in a row, this is illegal, you gotta stop it, it's an intentional wrong. Now, just because 13 other sheriffs are running similar programs doesn't make it right. At the same meeting, the state auditor for the 10th time came down and told Wabasha County it was illegal. They retained counsel to defend that illegality. The Attorney General has issued an opinion that such a program is illegal. And so the retaliation is based on these folks trying to just get rid of illegalities. And the point is that they consistently have been right on their legal issues, and the response of the government has been to retaliate, to use government resources, like I mentioned, hiring an attorney to represent something that's clearly, represent the county on an issue that's clearly illegal. And so this idea of using government resources against your political opponents is in itself retaliation, in answer to the question. And then secondly, I've just seen lots of evidence. Now the evidence we don't have, and to answer your question, the state won't provide. What I want to know is, was it that gentleman outside the court, district court, who was scowling at me, that law enforcement official, was he the one that then walked back to his office and pinged the records of the people who attended the hearing? Now that would be the type of retaliation evidence that would go real well into court, but the state won't provide the identity of the individual law enforcement officers pinging the records. As shown on Exhibit A, all we get is Wabasha County Sheriff Office. And what we need are the identities of those people, and the state has that information, and we should get it. And then we can ask that person, why in the world, after the study commission hearing, did you ping the records of the attendee and the husband of the attendee who was in the hospital at the time? And we believe when we ask that question, his response will be, because I wanted to know that person's information. And that's retaliatory because it's based on the identity of the individual. The government cannot do illegal things targeted toward an individual without it being retaliation. That's First Amendment retaliation. I can't target you for illegal acts. That's First Amendment retaliation. Now, we don't have all that evidence yet, and that's why I haven't included the First Amendment retaliation claim yet. But we're moving towards that, and the evidence will lay out as it will. But first, we need to know who these law enforcement officers are who are making these illegal accesses, so we can ask those questions that you're asking today. Any further questions?
Eric, I apologize if you answered this already, but among this group, who's been targeted the most? Who's like the lead leader here?
I think that the leaders are 5 who've been in government service. Representative Draskowski, current Wabasha board members Deborah Ocean and David Harms, former board chairman Merle Norman, and then former court employee Bev Snow.
Couple grand per violation, that adds up.
Yeah, 600 times at least 2,500 would be at least $1.5 million. And that would have a salvific effect in its own way, because if we start seeing these large damages awards, like the $1 million that was paid out in the Rasmussen case, that we would then see, I hope, some corrective behavior, but don't hold your breath. I've seen large judgment awards against the government, and still you get no response. And so it's not self-executing. It's not like they teach you in the textbooks. The people have to manage the government, and this is just one part of that. As Representative Scott said, you need many, many people stepping forward and demanding change to have it be effective.
Can you give a timeline of when this first came to light and how it from there kind of spread to include everybody here?
Yes, I've been working with the group on the other two lawsuits I mentioned, and the issue came up, well, we should probably check. And the first lawsuits under the Federal Data Privacy Act violations caught our attention. And then DPS and BCA changed their policies, so they gave out more information. And so a few weeks ago, we started getting some results back. We're still trying to supplement our table with more searching. But we then started compiling the table, and we saw this pattern that whenever we did things politically, we would get pinged. Now, one of the things that we're thinking is that with all these counties involved, actually, as documented in the Office of Legislative Auditors report, were these Wabasha County law enforcement officials using the passcodes from these other counties? For example, none of these plaintiffs have ever been to Fond du Lac Reservation west of Duluth, but the Fond du Lac Police Department was searching the records. So how does that happen if they're not sharing the passcodes? And the Office of Legislative Auditor said in the report in February 2013, hey, we gotta have a better security system on sharing passcodes. So it's just a way that they were disguising their accesses to the data. And there are other cities and counties that have not been frequently visited. I know the Lake Area Police Department in Chicago County, why are they searching my clients' records? Other counties are also listed, the big cities are listed as well. And there isn't the connection. What we see is political activity and then response.
And explain to me the difference between this group lawsuit and a class action lawsuit.
Yeah, this lawsuit is a collective action, which means a bunch of individual plaintiffs who are working together. It could have been brought as individual lawsuits, we discussed that. But then when we aggregated the data, so we had the individual tables, and then we aggregated the data, we saw this consistency of Wabasha County, the city of Wabasha, and these other entities pinging the data, and we said, wow, this is a problem. They know that we're reformers, we're against excessive spending in the county jail, against excessive county spending, want to go to county coordinator, not county administrator. We have all these substantive positions on the study commission, on the driver's school, and so forth, and they're going after us. And they want it to stop, and that's why we're seeking an injunction. But you really can't stop it unless you know the law enforcement officers are doing it. And all the rules are there. DPS has the rule, don't do it. The entities themselves, the sheriff departments, the police chiefs, they have written rules, don't do it. But the law enforcement is doing it regularly. The police chief and the sheriff let it go, and DPS knows it. And we all know that they all know it because of the Office of Legislative Auditor report. So that's where we're at.
All right, all these people here, the 18 people from Wabasha County,
Yes, they're all connected to Wabasha County.
and it says current and former Minnesota.
All right, some of them, one's in Virginia going to school, a couple have moved to Iowa, but they were at Material Times in Wabasha County. So, but they're all connected to Wabasha County, so
And-
either are or were
And
residents.
it refers to, in your news release, a citizen group. Is this a group that meets, or?
Well, it meets in the sense of, they meet for particular purposes, like Draskowski has a campaign, Merle Norman has a campaign, that we want to write a letter to editor together.
So all 18 of these people are supporters of your campaign?
No, not necessarily. Sometimes they may be, sometimes not, but the point is, we're all moving in the same direction. I mean, the question would be asked among the group, well, what have you done for me lately, right? So it's a regular group of people who are politically affiliated, not by party, not by ideology. They all interest in reform in Wabasha County. For example, if the Wabasha County Sheriff, who's a law enforcement official, is violating what the state attorney general and state auditor have said is the law on diversionary programs and safe driving schools, they support a lawsuit to stop that obvious illegality. Now, again, on the street, 99% of people say that law enforcement should stop obvious illegalities because it undermines the moral authority of law enforcement to enforce the law. And those 1% that disagree work for the government. So that hearing's coming up on October 15th in district court, and it's been reported on in the media, and more information can be obtained about that. And so that would be an example, listed in the complaint, that they've supported campaigns, they've taken public positions in newspapers and other forums, they've attended meetings, and they filed, this group, members of the group have filed 2 lawsuits against Wabasha County and the Wabasha County Study Commission because of obvious illegalities. And so this is the third lawsuit brought by the group and, or, you know, members of the group. And it's very directed at a problem in government. And, you know, it's like, I've said in the group, I think appreciates this, and so it's not a surprise to them, that in the old times, the sheriff would see lawbreakers and would form a posse to enforce the law. Now, in this world, it's the citizens who have to form a posse to get the sheriff to follow the law. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, thanks for coming.
So I guess there's a legislator with the last name of Scott.
He's,
So that's.
I bet probably can tell you more.
I'll figure it out.
He's wondering